One of the funnest things I've had to do over the last 5 or 6 years is being invited to talk to high school seniors. When you get to go talk to high school seniors about financial literacy, investing, financial freedom, it is always an eye-opening experience. And I'm happy to say that the one and only Brandon Potts got the opportunity to do that here recently. And I want to know what the heck he talked about. So what's going on, Brandon? Tell me about that experience.
Oh man, it was enjoyable. Even one of the first things I said to these seniors, and we know how we used to say it too in high school, thinking that, man, I don't know why I'm in this class. It doesn't pertain to life. And I said, listen, your school cares enough, brought me in for the week, and everything I'm going to be teaching you this week, you'll be able to live out. These are things you're going to be living every day for the rest of your life.
Yeah, I love the fact that some schools, some teachers are trying financial literacy. It was obviously one of the missing elements when we were both going to school, but you still gotta crack the code of high school seniors, right? They're still
Right.
17, 18 years old, raging hormones, probably have college on the mind or whatever else is going on. How do
And
you,
they have senioritis. Here it is in the spring. They've got major senioritis.
oh yeah, it's almost over. Like they got one semester left. It's, yeah. So how do you get their attention? How do you shock them? How do you make them sit forward and frankly stop looking at their phones?
Yeah. What I do is I'll come with a statement that's maybe a little jarring. Each day I had a few things that I thought would shake them up. And knowing that this is the first week that I've ever done this. So each year they've already asked me next year to come back.
Nice.
So the plan is for an entire week every year with the seniors. So you're trying to come up with something that catches their attention, and usually is I'm going to teach you how to get to financial independence, which is the word language we all use. Getting to financial independence in your early 30s. That's all it takes. I'll have you there in your early 30s if you'll listen.
Yeah, I love that. I kind of try to take the same stance, right? You're 18. It's funny. One of the things that, again, it's always fun. So one of the things that I love to do, and maybe you can adapt this, is again, you're standing in front of, I'll just call them 18-year-olds. Something I always asked them was, how many of you have parents that work?
Right. Oh, that's great.
Most of them will raise their hand, right? And some of them will say my dad works or my mom works, the other one doesn't. But most of them I have found, most of them say, yes, mom and dad work.
Yep.
And then I say, something to the effect of your mom and dad are probably, over 40, right? Just doing rough math.
Right.
Most of the time they're over 40. And then I go into that last point. How would you like to be retired at 30? And they lean forward, right? Because you've just anchored them on mom and dad working at 40. You can talk about being financially free or retired at 30. That I've seen that percolate and get people going, oh, tell me some more about this.
That's right.
I didn't know that was even possible. That's a fun talk track.
And now, granted, I had my senior daughter in the class. Next year, I have a junior daughter, so she'll be a senior in this class.
Nice.
And then I've got my junior hire. He'll be coming up in a few years. So
cool.
Yeah, it's hard. You have my worst critic is my own child and sitting in the class.
Oh yeah, she's trying to hide probably. Like
rolling her eyes. The good thing is she says, oh, I've heard all this, and it actually is resonating. That's the good thing we all know.
That's good. Yeah. It's the other thing I always find interesting is asking high school seniors if, what's the difference between rich and wealthy? Right. Try to get them to respond to that. Cause that's always interesting. Like, who do you know is wealthy? They're going to talk about, I don't know, just different rappers and actors and ball players and stuff like that. And then if you ask them who's rich, they sometimes stumble. Like they can't make that connection.
Right. No, and I started out the week. The first thing I did is I was sharing my story. sharing even back to, I know you and I've talked about this, even back to when I was in commercial banking, and I would
Mhm.
interview all these people, the wealthiest people in our county that had loans with the bank. And I
Right.
told them, I said, the major principle I saw is either they made their money or kept their money in real
Yeah.
estate. And I noticed that resonated. I could see them, they perked up. It's like, oh, interesting. I said, no, that was 100% every one of them. So you're trying to find, ways to engage them. And that was something that we talked about early on the first day.
Yeah. Did you by chance talk about income, net income, disposable income? Did you kind of try to help them understand those three
We
or
did,
nice?
so what I went through was, I'll jump around, but what we did
Yeah.
go through, what is a typical budget? And I tried to use an income with them. So I took a $3,000 take home. I
Nice.
said, that's
Okay.
probably close to you're going to be your first income. That means you're making about 45 to 50,000. You're going
Okay.
to take home roughly 3,000. And so we did general budget, what is good practice.
Mm.
And then I went into what's best practice. Then I used some of the cash flow quadrant principles.
Oh, nice. I
Brought
did
that
not do
in.
that. How'd that go? Because that's something I've never done. Tell me about that. I've never brought that in.
I think their eyes perked up when I showed them the employee and the self-employed quadrant,
Mm-hmm.
how much is taken out in taxes, but
Mm.
then talked about, of course, the business and investor. I wanted to relate that you can start being on that right side of the quadrant, but I was showing them the differences in taxes,
Mm.
and then went to, as an employee, what's taken out first:
Yeah.
taxes,
Yeah.
social security. So I was getting them to go through your taxes, then your social security, then your expenses, then
Interesting.
what's left. And then I went to the right side, showing that it's income, expenses, depreciation, then you pay taxes, and many times it can be zero.
Mm. I love that. I'll have to look into doing that next. I always thought that taxes were, or the cash flow quadrant was like too advanced, but I think you're right. I think if you come at it from taxes, it's kind of eye opening. I think that's very smart.
Yeah, I drew out the square and I went through it. Now I'm left-handed, so me and Dion are alike. I'm left-handed. I draw it out at first. Usually I get to the class early, draw everything out on the whiteboard,
Mm.
then leave maybe a key point or two with each thing I'm talking about, writing it during
Mm.
that to emphasize. It was also telling me, okay, I want to emphasize this point.
Right.
And so I would say, what do you think the employee pays in taxes? So you're
Mm.
asking those questions, letting them say. And it was interesting to hear, 20%,
Mm.
25%, going through it, getting them to also understand. And I've got something percolating, maybe a book. I don't know.
Mm.
I've got something percolating in my brain of
Ah,
the
I like it.
power of leverage, because the only people that seem to be getting ahead in our lives that we see are using leverage at its highest levels.
Hmm.
And then I showed them on the employee, self-employed, who are you relying on? You're relying on yourself and yourself alone. There is no leverage on that side.
Yeah.
The people that are getting ahead are on the right side, and they're maximizing and using leverage lots of different ways.
Yeah. Very well said. Very well said. Again, you had a 5 day, it was 5 days, right?
5 days.
Yeah. Do you remember the topics of each day? I just started jumping in, but what were the rough topics for the 5 days?
So, day one, we talked about, I wanted them to understand the difference between an asset and a liability. I'm using a lot of those starting out there. Then explaining from the asset and liability, I showed a graphic, and I'm going to try to describe it without seeing it. I drew a big, in all caps, bad debt is
Mm.
burden. So I drew burden really large across, and then I wrote really small, tiny benefit.
Mm.
Then I talked about good debt or leverage wrote out small letters burden, big letters benefit. So understanding, we were talking about, good debt and bad debt, what that is. but I was showing them what we've all discussed, the different economies that the people that succeed have lots of assets. And a lot of times it's leveraged because it's putting money in your pocket versus the asset renters. So I was drawing these out. So that was most of it. And then I talked about work, because they're going into the work world. And I talked to them about the principle of work to learn before you work to earn. I think we all struggled with this when our first jobs. Man, I want to earn, I want to earn, I want to earn, but we weren't willing to learn. So I was getting them to say, here's the right perspective when you get your first jobs, is find good mentors. In job interviews, ask, what's my opportunity? Who am I going to learn from? So I talked to them about employment type stuff too, teaching them how to apply for a job, questions to ask that show somebody that wants to learn and wants opportunity, and not be so much, what's my benefits? What's my benefits? What's my benefits? So that was day one.
That's great. Love that. Where'd you go day two?
Day two, we went into the budget, said just money management. And then I went into the purposes of money, and I drew out income, expenses, and assets and liabilities for the poor, for the middle class, and for the financially independent. And so I showed the flow of money for the poor, and how they all they spend and all they think about is buying things and consumables.
Right.
And of course, that's where the teenagers are too. I'm saying all you focus on is buying. You're eating out. You're buying consumables, and what do you have left after you spend that money? This is, I don't want you to live in this habit going forward. And I used the principle. I had an alliteration. I said, the poor, it's money woes. And then I go to middle class and I show, they're buying things, but it's nicer things, a bigger house, a nicer car, a designer purse. They're buying all these designer things, and they're spending it on things that don't grow in value, that cost you money. And there I called it, they want to live in the money shows. They want to show that they got money.
Yeah, for sure.
And money owes. I put both those, shows and owes. And that's what we see in the middle class, is they want to show as if they're successful, but really they owe a lot.
Yep.
Then I went into financial independence and showed most of the financially independent have at least 5 streams of income. And it comes, let me go back. Middle class, I grow big liabilities and small asset box for the balance sheet. The financially independent, I'm growing a huge asset box and a smaller liability box, but show that their income comes from their assets and that they're growing that. And that's the principle. I said, money grows.
Oh, I like that.
So I like that. Shows and grows.
Well done. Well done. That's Tuesday. How about
Wednesday? That was Tuesday. And hopefully this can show. I did show this graphic. If you don't mind, I'm going to hold it up.
Yeah, let's see.
You tell me. But I wanted to show this to them.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
The rich versus poor.
Yeah. The hat. That is a very telling. Because again, one thing. Yeah. If you put those up without labeling them, I would have asked them, who do you think's rich and who do you think's poor?
Oh yeah, that's a good idea.
Yeah, I would take that, because that really goes to the point of show. To your point, the middle class,
the money shows.
Yeah, that's the money shows versus the rich are like, no, I just got a t-shirt and jeans.
Yep,
yeah, I like that.
Day 3, I began to talk about we're in a smaller school, so many of the kids are in multiple sports. We just don't have enough kids, so a good percentage of them are in sports. And so I said, hey, I know you care about sports. Why not become a financial athlete?
Ah, I like that.
Said,
okay.
How is a financial athlete? And I used the illustration of, if you're an amateur, you're trying to practice till you get it right. But what is a professional? A professional practices till they can't get it wrong, and they're spending 10,000 hours working on it. Yep. I said, think of it in sports, all of you. young adults, you want to be great athletes and y'all have become great athletes. Why not become a great financial athlete?
I think that's great. You got to connect it with something that's important to them. I think that was a wise choice. I like that. I'm gonna steal that. I like that.
So, and then I went into, I had enough time because that was just a small portion. Each day, each class was about 45 minutes. So I'm maximizing that. I'd mentioned day one that I'm going to show you how to have your first property and live in it for free or
Mm,
very close. And
sure.
so we went into a specific example. I know of a property, a duplex that recently sold, right
Mhm.
where they know where it is. I pulled it up and I showed it to them, and I went through it of house hacking,
Mm,
showing them how you can put 3.5% down. It
yeah.
was, a little over $10,000. You rent one side, rent out some rooms to some friends, and they were living in it for less than $400 a month.
Beautiful. Yeah, if you could, that has to be. And anybody's watching my channel who gets the opportunity to talk to high school students, please, 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 please make sure house hacking is part of the conversation. Likely a multifamily, a duplex, tri, quad. We just got to get these kids to realize they can take their largest expense, live for free. That's going to facilitate being retired by 30. Well done. House hacking has to be a part of it. I agree.
And one of the students asked me they were caring. So they were starting to ask some really engaged. Usually it was day two. I started getting more and more questions. Even though they knew me, they were getting more and more comfortable. One
Yeah.
said, "Tell me what to do. Give me order of action."
Okay.
So that was a phenomenal question. That's somebody that cares. That's
Yep.
somebody that's really got interest. So the
Yep.
first one we talked about was number one is self-discipline, and
Mm,
learning. That is step action number one, learning how to live in self-discipline, not spending all of your money. The second one we talked about was setting up a separate account from your
mm,
operating account, having a separate savings account that automatically sweeps into a savings account. So getting it out of your operating account, whatever that is,
yep.
and putting it in something that at least earns a little bit of interest.
I like it.
We used Dion's Swan account. I love that.
Yeah.
And so I played with that a little bit and showing them where to be. And then the third thing was begin building credit. So we were talking to a bunch of 18-year-olds. What's
Yeah.
the proper way to build credit?
Did any of them, I don't know if you asked, I'm just curious, what percentage had a credit card? Did you ask?
I did. I would say at that moment, it was about 20% of them, maybe
Wow.
25% had.
A credit card, huh? Okay.
My daughter, of course, we began working on this when she turned 18, and there were several others that their
Okay.
parents had done. Now, understand, this is a private school,
Yeah.
a little different than a public school. So,
Sure.
I was talking to these students that some of their parents have already got on that. And I think that was a good percentage,
Yeah.
25%. But then
Okay.
there was others that said, okay, I want to do this.
I like it. I like it. Again, it's really funny. I mean, because again, I've done public and private schools, and you're right. There is that kind of delta. Um, but yeah, one of the things that you have to talk about is credit cards, because that was what killed me at 18 is when I got to
Yes.
college was credit cards. You got to talk about how just rotten they can be if
You
used
mean
incorrectly.
you? Me too.
Yeah.
I think and we're trying to help these young adults not make the mistakes that we did.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
then that's okay. That was day three.
4.
Day four is when I went into the cash flow quadrant.
Nice. Okay. That makes sense.
That's where I went in and showing them the largest expense in your life is taxes.
Yep.
And the wealthy think about this and begin living more of their income and investment on the right side,
Mhm.
reducing those taxes. So that was the
Absolutely.
core of day four.
And then you wrapped it up with the capstone. What was day 5?
Day five, I had to move things around because a bunch of the kids were gone on Friday.
Oh, okay.
So the house hack was supposed to be day five, but when I found out a third of the class was going to be gone on a trip, I had to
Mhm.
move that
Sure.
house hack to day three.
Okay.
But day five, I did talk about holding your money accountable. And I
Mm.
used the principles I've discussed before of dead money, safe money, healthy, and wealthy
I
money.
love that. You gave that to me a year ago. I think
Yes.
Tell us more about that. Cause that's wise advice.
And I think I'm going to create another video on even this material. I've got many videos off of this material.
Absolutely.
So dead money is 0 to 4%. And I was telling them, okay, what do you think inflation really is? Not just what the government's stating, but what do you think it really is? I said it's in that 4% range, probably.
Certainly.
Maybe higher. I said, so you want to have the money you're wanting to access periodically through a year, you're keeping some cash in that money market type of account, like you're putting your sweep account into that savings.
Yep.
You're putting that in those type of money market accounts that are earning between 3 and 4, 3 and 4.5. Yep. You're wanting it there. Safe money would be your 5 to 9%, which is like bonds, some of the dividend stocks, that type of thing. Healthy money is the stock market earning 10 to 13, but then I showed them the historical average of actual real return of the S&P 500 over the last 30 years, which ended up being right around 10%.
Yeah.
Then I said where the wealthy live is 14% and up. They really hold their money accountable. And then that's when I taught them the rule of 72. Yep. And that principle. So now we're talking those different percentages. And then I gave them some examples of how many times. So you take the percentage you're earning, that actual number, dividing it into 72 and showing how often it doubles, how many years it doubles. So I then showed that with a money market account. We did let them get out their phones and do their calculator.
Yeah.
Do it on the S&P 500. And then I said, well, how about I show you one where you can double your money even faster?
Yeah.
And that's when I took that actual duplex and said, okay, let's take that example. You lived in it for 2 years. Now we're converting it into a rental. Let's look at our return on that money. So we went through that with actual rents that I know what rents are on this property. And I showed them the return with that duplex that they just house hacked. And I said, now what would it be like, as we all use, if you own 4? So I'm using all of what we all talk about and I'm putting it all together. And so I made that the capstone, and it probably was a good capstone discussion.
Yeah.
But that was a lot of the week.
Well, one thing I know for sure is you're going to take this experience, the content you've created, and you're going to put a lot of this on YouTube to help other high school seniors and parents. What is the YouTube channel?
It's Build to Rent, Investing and Financial Talk.
Folks, do yourself a favor, go subscribe to that channel. This is a wonderful strategy to help high school seniors. I'm glad he said yes. I'm glad he's going back. This is it's a very fun thing to try to open the eyes of high school seniors. It seems like you did a great job. Congratulations.
Thank you.